Hi, I'm Cheryl Wilson, a first-year doctoral student in the Learning, Design, and Technology program, and this is my final presentation describing my design for Edit 8190 Fall 2018 Design Studio. This semester we've discussed a lot about our philosophical roots in trees in seminar. While I'm still figuring out my specific area of focus for my research, I hope to align my scholarship along the path of Seymour Papert. I'm intrigued with this concept of constructionism. I agree with his views of the computer as a tool for construction. I was inspired to design an artifact that would align along the principles regarded by Papert. This led me to the idea of exploring Scratch. Scratch, which I consider to be a technological descendant to Papert's Logo programming language, is a visual programming language that uses block-based shapes for coding. The blocks fit together like puzzle pieces. This structure makes coding less intimidating for children and novices alike. My design project was to explore Scratch looking for areas of improvement, areas that could be expanded, or just navigating the application to spark inspiration for my design. Dr. Reber suggested one way to accomplish this was to be by planning a Scratch session with my contacts with Greensboro Girl Scout Troop 20158. During the planning for this event, the following design problems appeared. Troop 20158's season was just getting started. The troop has undergone some changes in leadership and member size, which caused difficulty in finding an opening in their schedule. I also discovered that UGA has a policy of preferring that buildings are closed during home football weekends. Issue 2 dealt with the complexity of age ranges. I mentioned earlier that the troop had grown. However, majority of the increase was in the Brownies troop level. Brownies included girls in grades 2 and 3. My target population of middle school students would include cadets through ambassadors. Unfortunately, this population within the troop had not seen as significant as growth as Brownies. This presented a design problem of having to design a lesson that would be appropriate for grades 2 through 12. The date and time for the session also plays a part in the number of participants that would be available. More older scouts would be available the later the date for the session. Brownies would not be a problem regardless of when the session would be. Issue 3 dealt with maintaining the attention and interest of the Brownies. Discussion about the event with the troop leader discovered that 4 hours would be too long to hold the attention of the Brownie level scouts. It was recommended that the session should be cut in half to remedy this problem. There was also discussion about the ability of the Brownies to being able to navigate the application without a persistent presence from a facilitator. Thankfully, the troop scheduled opened to accommodate 3 potential dates for the event. We decided to use November 3rd as this was the only date in consideration that was not on the same weekend as a home football game. After discussions with Dr. Kopcha and Gretchen Thomas, who've had experience working with Scratch and younger participants, they suggested the idea of using tangible blocks for the younger girls. The older girls I was confident could handle navigating the application with less guidance. I decided I would present them with a Scratch design challenge while I would work hands-on with the younger scouts using the tangible blocks. The blocks would resolve the issue of the Brownies having to use a workstation and trying to orient themselves around the application. The blocks would also allow them to grasp some key computational concepts prior to using the application. The issue to address the reduction of the session time in half, I planned a snack break within the event. Upon completion of the snack break, I would poll the girls to see if they wanted to continue working on their designs or if we should skip ahead to the presentation of their designs. This schedule would accommodate any weariness from the young learners and allow them to leave early. However, my hope was that if the girls are engaged in their activities, it would allow them access to use the full time to complete their designs. I remained steadfast on the time because readings I had done of other projects and programs such as this, usually more time was needed, not less. I was able to find resources on the Scratch for Educators website that contained a link to a downloadable zip file with all the block shapes, so I didn't have to create them. I borrowed Gretchen's laminating machine to laminate the cutouts of the shapes. The original plan was to use laminated blocks and an erasable marker to allow the brownies to change variables. My final paper will include a copy of the lesson plan and session itinerary in the appendix. During the session, I split the girls into two groups within the lab. The cadets and seniors were on one side, while I asked the brownies to gather around a round table with one workstation in the back of the room. I started by making sure the older girls were logged in and working independently before settling in with the brownies. The older girls had the challenge of designing a game that the brownies could play. There were also printed challenges on cards that Gretchen had used with her Barrel Makerspace students. After getting the older girls situated, I went back to the brownies and we started with our challenge to create an animation using Scratch. The overview of the lesson was for the girls to manipulate the code on a project I had started but left partially undone for them to complete, to make one sprite, which is Scratch terminology for a character in a project, walk towards another. We started our lesson by discussing their favorite cartoons and animations. We reviewed what the block pieces meant and played around selecting a few and modifying values to see what happens within the application. The girls did wonderfully with selecting appropriate blocks. They caught on to the concept of modifying the value necessary to make the sprite move. After we continued our lesson, they intuitively started playing around with colors on our sprites and with the background of the scene. Just prior to the snack break, they were independently coding values to change the appearance of the sprite and the screen. Overall, I would consider the session to be a success. At the end of the session, I queried the girls, asking for feedback about the session, and comments were all positive. There was even one brownie that became emotional when I announced it was the end of the session because they wanted to work more. The session didn't last the entire scheduled 4 hours. I decided to call it a little early when I noticed the older scouts were bored. The younger scouts, on the other hand, were excited and enthusiastic about exploring Scratch. One brownie even created her own scene and was working on the coding to make 2 sprites speak using text images. I initially didn't plan on the brownies working independently on their own on workstations. However, after the snack break, I could tell they were ready to explore on their own. By the end of the session, they had gotten comfortable with finding games and videos and even critiquing what they had found. I realized I focused too narrowly on the younger scouts, which led to older scouts not getting as much from the session as I would have liked. I neglected my target population because I made assumptions that they would challenge themselves. I could have been more hands-on and gently pushed them to develop their designs further by adding in more challenges, game features, or just customizing the game's tutorials that they worked on more. I didn't realize this until it was time for presentations and I was able to interact with them, but by this point, it was too late. The tangible box appeared to be a success. I believed it helped orient the younger girls to the purpose of the application, and that's why they were able to take off and work independently with that application before the end of the session. During future implementations of this project, I would suggest splitting the session into 2, having the older and younger girls attend separately so that they can all get equal feedback and interaction, or to have another facilitator that can help mentor and guide all of the girls. In full disclosure, the idea was presented to me before planning of this event. However, due to last-minute errands in preparation for the event, there wasn't enough time to reach out and find volunteers. The laminated paper blocks were a success, even though I forgot to bring the erasable markers. I think they still worked, and I believe they were partially responsible for the brownies taking to the application as well as they did. In next steps, I am curious how this design would work with other materials, such as plastic or wood. I look forward to your feedback and comments. Thanks for watching.